Welcome to SHIP Region 5 SHPEtinas virtual conference series, a conference to inspire, empower, and educate women in STEM. We had 8 fantastic speakers, and we are so excited to share their sessions on our channel. We hope you enjoy. Our 4th speaker is Ms. Mariela Siles. Ms. Mariela Siles is currently a Senior Delivery Manager at the IBM Corporation in Austin, Texas, where she leads the delivery and development of the IBM Cloud block storage services with a team of 25 developers and testers. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from George Mason University and her Master of Science in Technology Commercialization from the University of Texas at Austin. In addition to her work, she enjoys giving back to the community through various organizations that focus on female empowerment, education, and STEM. With SHIP, she has been a lifetime member since 2009, and her journey with the organization started since she was an undergraduate student. She currently serves as the National Affairs Community Chair for SHIP National since 2018, as well as co-chair of Latinitas, and sits at the Board of Directors for Community Care Health Centers. Enjoy Karen's session as she presents Qué Esperas? Manifest the life you want.
Much for the opportunity. Thank you for inviting me here today. I love the work that you all are doing today, and the fact that we dedicate it all to the SHPEtinas of Region 5 is amazing. So thank you again for inviting me. Awesome. So you all heard a little bit about me. I had a couple of slides where I was going to kind of talk a little bit about my background, but since we kind of went through that, I'll just kind of quickly go through the slides. So really, one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk to you about today was I wanted to not only talk about my journey, for the past, since undergraduate, but also perhaps show you how in different parts of my journey, negotiating, learning how to negotiate was really one of the biggest success drivers, in my career. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation, then feel free to just ask on the chat, and then we can address later. So I wanted to show off my awesome family. So as you heard from my bio, I'm a Senior Delivery Manager at IBM. I've been there for 13 years. I now do cloud block storage, which is really the biggest, one of the biggest focuses that IBM has is us creating a competitive cloud, such as Amazon and Azure. So, along with that, as we mentioned, I've been part of SHIP for a long time, so 16 years, part of Region 5 for, 13 of them, and then the other 3 were part of Region 4. I am the oldest of 4 siblings, so this is a picture that we took. My brother and I actually both graduated, so the one in purple right here, he graduated from high school last year, and I happened to graduate from my master's, so I thought it'd be really cool to take a picture as graduates, even though it was from different parts of our life. So, and as mentioned, I went to George Mason University, graduated in 2007, and actually Patrick is now going to George Mason University. I believe he's picked mechanical engineering, so that's exciting. And he's also part of SHIP, so that's another exciting piece. And just last year, I graduated with my Master's of Science in Technology Commercialization from the University of Texas. So obviously, hook 'em horns for those that are from UT Austin. Okay, so I wanted to kind of, at IBM, we like to do this thing called the journey map. So this can be very helpful. I know a lot of you are having mentors, or if you decide to have a mentee in the future, just kind of having a picture of your journey, right? So I wanted to highlight here some important things, such as not only, some of my degrees, but also, important moments that have helped me get to where I am today. And I will also point out certain pieces where a negotiation really helped me get to that position, because I want you all to kind of see that it, you know, it doesn't come easy to everyone. And I also had to learn it, you know, through hardships throughout my career. So I was born and raised in Bolivia, so in Cochabamba, and we moved to the US in 1998. I graduated from George Mason University, as mentioned, and a really big part of that, just as some of you, was, you know, the connection I made with SHPE. I think if I would have not known of SHPE, I probably would not have graduated as an engineer, because I really needed that, you know, like the familia, and just to know that there were other people out there who looked like me, who were struggling with the same thing. So because of SHPE, I actually was hired into IBM. I actually got a job offer at one, well, it was after the conference, but the conferences really highlighted companies that George Mason was not privy to. So George Mason is in the DC area, and they do a lot of government contracting. So at the time, you know, I wasn't a citizen. So really, as an electrical engineer, you really have no options in the government contracting areas, because you know, you do need a citizenship for a lot of those things. And so luckily, I was able to, you know, get an interview with IBM, and I was hired in July of 2007. And so that is actually what made me move to Austin. And I think, you know, moving to Austin, I knew no one. And so what I did is I looked up SHPE Austin Professional, and the first person that came up was, you know, contact us. And I actually am still friends with the person who I contacted. And he happened to work at IBM, which was a total coincidence. But so it was pretty cool to not only get to, you know, do a lot of the community service stuff after work, but also get to know someone who was working at IBM, and who actually was working in a similar role that I was in, but in a different unit. And so even though I got hired as a software engineer, I didn't really do electrical engineering. Like, I don't think I've touched a microprocessing board since 2007. But I really wanted to work for IBM. And I think it was probably my sophomore year when I went to a regional conference. Well, at the time it was called the ETCC, which is like the entire East Coast used to have a conference. But now they just do them based on regions. And so I remember them getting an award. And I remember just thinking to myself, oh, I really want to work for that company. And so I, you know, even though the role was software engineer and it was in support, you know, I really wasn't in love with the position, but I wanted to work for IBM, and I had never thought of leaving Virginia. And so moving from Virginia to Texas seemed pretty cool at the time, because I figured, you know, I either do it now or then, you know, I don't move at all. So, and that's been the case, right? So I moved here to Austin, Texas, not thinking that I would actually find, you know, just friends or family, but, you know, I feel like now Texas is my home, and in particular Austin. So, so as you see here, you know, while joining the SHPE Austin Professional Chapter, I was the treasurer, secretary, vice president, and president. And then during one of those, we hosted our LDC at UT. And so during one of the sessions, I got to talk to the vice president at the time, and he said, well, you know, you really should look into being a vice president. And, you know, based on, not only had I been part of SHPE as undergrad, but I really cared about the organization. And so I decided, okay, well, you know, I'm going to run. I knew nothing about what it meant. And I still remember going to UT to, you know, start pitching the idea that I was going to run, and, you know, kind of asking like UT to kind of help. And so it was a pretty interesting journey. I think I learned a lot about SHPE as an organization in the 2 years. We got, I think, some of the coolest things that we got to do was change the chant. So the original chant that you guys have now we changed it that year that I was VP, because the previous one was really hard to say, and I feel like this one really matched our mission and our vision. And so, you know, we had a really good time coming up with the Chan at the time. So, you know, as you can see, you know, I started at in July 2007, and it really took about 7 years for me to work through a promotion. Some of it was personal. I was having so much fun dedicating a lot of my time after work to SHPE, and being a vice president is like a part-time job. So I felt like I just didn't have the brain power to really focus on my career. And so I kept, you know, asking my management team, like, you know, what can I do to get better? Like, you know, I want to get to the next band level, but, you know, what do I need? And so there was a lot of feedback that my manager kept giving me. And so that is the key important thing when you're ready to negotiate, right? Because if you're going to negotiate, then you should already be performing at the level, like let's say you want to go to the next band level or to the next job role, then you really should already be performing at that level or higher. And then it's just a matter of presenting the data that you're already doing the work. So after I finished, you know, serving on the board, I really enjoyed that. So I said, okay, well, now that I've gotten, you know, my band promotion, you know, I think I'm tired of what I'm doing. So I started kind of looking around, you know, within IBM to leave. And there was a time here that I wanted to go back to school. I thought maybe I should get my MBA. But I never really, I don't know, something inside of me was like, it's not the time yet. So let's just, you know, focus on being RVP here, and then we'll figure out what to do. And so because I loved serving on the board so much, I decided to look at local stuff in Austin that I could help with. So became a board member for SHPEtinas. I've been there for 6 years now, and I think this is probably my last year. So I'm looking for the next thing to do. One of the biggest things as you go on and you're embarking your careers, or if you already are a professional, then you can agree with me, is networking, right? So the only way that I've moved to different roles has been through networking or through knowing of an opportunity that someone is thinking about, because there are some roles in companies or even opportunities, maybe even at your school, that are not known to everyone, right? So maybe through talking to professors or talking to your TAs, like you can find out about some research opportunities or things that perhaps you didn't think of that you would be good at, right? So the more you know, I started taking some courses on like how to create a better brand for myself, because one of the biggest feedbacks that my manager gave me, I was so young, and I mean, I looked a lot younger than I do now, and I just wanted everything, right? I was like so hungry to learn everything. So I was like, someone would say, who wants this? I'd be like, me. And so I was taking on a lot without really demonstrating, like without really focusing on one thing and being very good at that one thing. And so through my networks, I learned about this particular role, which was to essentially be, it's called a technical assistant. So at IBM, the distinguished engineers, like the very technical people who are executives, they can have a person that helps them, but that's not like their assistant that's going to manage their calendar. It's someone who's in technical meetings with you. You get to learn how things are made, how decisions are made at that level. And so that really was, for me, a launching point into not only leaving the team that I was in and support in the organization, but really learning how decisions are made and how, you know, other people promote themselves and talk about themselves. And so this really, I feel like, is one of the biggest moments that where I feel that you'll notice that that my career really changed. while I was still in this group, I applied for this program called Corporate Service Corps. It's kind of like the Peace Corps, but for IBM, and they send you somewhere in the world for a month, and all you do is consulting, which is pretty cool. So I got to travel. And right as I came back from this trip, you know, it opened my eyes to wanting to change the world, not only, you know, within IBM, but I was ready for some new change. And so I spoke to my management, and this is where, you know, advocating for yourself and kind of knowing what you want and knowing how to ask things, you know, started kind of clicking in my brain, right? So I knew I've always loved engineering, but I know that my personality matches better with either business, or I really wanted to help people grow their careers. And so I really wanted to be a people manager. And so in order to get there, a lot of my mentors would say, well, you should probably become a project manager first. And then once you learn how the process works, right? Development, how you go from inception to defining stories to then, you know, defining the support and deploying the app and all that stuff. Like, you kind of have to learn that, because I was new, right? I had been in support for so long that I didn't know really what cloud was. And at the time, it was one of IBM's newest business unit, right? And so I ended up getting this project management role. I had never been a project manager. I didn't even take the PMP. I would hear about it at like SHPE conferences when they're like, take your PMP certification, but I knew nothing. And I was lucky that I got paired with like a very young team, and we all learned together. So as you can see, because of I was doing a very good job here, then they ended up giving me another role with, it was like a different team. But the reason why I wanted to point this is because throughout, from August 2015 to like February 2016, I kept getting, you know, what we called reorganization, right? So even at other companies, like they go through a change in management, change in vice president and director, and sometimes that can be very hurtful for your career, in the sense that you just you have to start training your manager, or getting that relationship with your manager again, right? And it's like context switching between between projects, right? So I really struggled through this time, basically because I felt like the minute I was learning open source and how to manage open source, then that's when they would say, okay, well, now you work with this. And so it's kind of like starting all over again. So I was very, very frustrated. And I remember thinking, you know, maybe this is the time to leave IBM, and maybe I should go back to school. And so I started looking around, interviewing with other companies, but I, you know, later realized that maybe I just needed to ask to be, you know, part of a different business, like within cloud, but just a different organization. So I met with a mentor, and she happened to have a project management role open. So, I mean, you can see that I took a bunch of different project management roles, but this is the one that really helped me settle in. And, you know, she's been probably one of my biggest mentors / best managers I've had, where she pretty much said, you know, I'm working on this stuff. We have, like, she showed me a timeline of 2 years from now, this is what we have to deliver, or a year from now, you know. So I knew that there was some type of continuity. And so I decided to, even though it was a lateral move, like all of these were lateral, like it wasn't a promotion at all, right? I think the point that I want to make here is, you know, realizing what I wanted and asking for it, having that negotiation. I know you guys had a session today on difficult conversations. And so having that conversation that was so uncomfortable for me, you know, because my mom always said, well, just work hard and they'll recognize you, which is true, but they will like your managers are not, like, they're not mind readers, so they're not going to give you what you want, or, you know, they don't know what you're expecting. Or if you don't ask for things, then they might say, well, you know, she's fine with the job role she has and with the pay she has, right? So I think this manager really taught me to be able to ask for what I wanted. And she would, and I said, yeah, okay, so I only want to be a project manager because I want to be a people manager. And so she would train me. She would kind of say, hey, there's this problem, like these two developers don't get along, what would you do, kind of thing. And so you know, that again was part of the negotiating piece. Before I took the role, I said, okay, if I take this, I just want you to know that I will do the best project management ever, but I really want to be a people manager. So is there any chance you can train me on that? And so because of that, I was able to finally get the promotion and the role that I wanted. It was actually this manager who then became my manager, but she got promoted, and so she kind of took me with her. And so I think, you know, as you can see, this part of my life, I didn't really learn how to negotiate. And she actually sent me to a negotiating class, which is what I'm sharing with you today, because she said, I think, like, you've been lacking this. And she's like, I helped you, but I think you just need to be a little bit more aggressive if you really want to, you know, make it to like executive, right? And just on the fun side here, I decided to join NAC, to join the NAC committee and be the NAC chair since 2018. And as I was being the manager and I was in this new role, you know, I was doing really good. Again, I had to start quantifying a lot of what I was doing in order for myself to get noticed, and just to have that confidence to be able to ask for something. And so I ended up asking them to help me support me while I was going through this master's program. So this is it's essentially like an MBA, but it just takes 1 year. And I did it while going to work, you know, like school and work at the same time. It was the hardest year of my life, but it was like pretty cool to just be able to have that conversation with my management team and be able to ask for that support. And right after graduation, again, the negotiations, the techniques that we're going to talk about today really resulted in this promotion. So anyways, enough about me. I wanted to kind of show you why I wanted to present about this topic, because I really feel that as Latina women, it's not in our nature to do that. So let's move on to more of the learning. So take a moment and think of a recent negotiation you've had to make. It could be in school, maybe it was with your team, maybe you're working in a group meeting, it could be at work if you're a professional. And if you have a family, it could even be a negotiation with your family members or your children. And as you're thinking of that recent negotiation, what were some of the results of that negotiation? Okay, so someone said family. Okay, some family negotiations, right? So hopefully the results were positive for some of you. My first negotiation that I had to make, the results were negative because I kept asking for the wrong thing. I kept thinking that my management team knew what I wanted, because in my head, I thought, well, I show up every day to work, I do good things, so you should be able to know what I want, right? So hopefully some of the results were positive, but if you're thinking of a lot of the results that were not negative, then that kind of goes to some of the studies, right? So I've read a lot of books, not only through my master's program, but while searching for more data for today's class, or not class, today's session. And it's just difficult for women to make negotiations. And the reason is, it could be your background, right? So I remember the first time, I think it was like when I got the job offer from IBM, and I also had another offer from another company, and I told my mom, you know, I'm just gonna ask for more money. And she was like, why? They're offering you a job, just take what they give you. And I said, yeah, but like the range of an engineer says, you know, I just looked up what is the range for a software engineer, and the ranges were different. And I said, I feel like I'm getting the low end, so maybe I should ask for more. And, you know, she just kept coming back and say, like, don't be ungrateful, just take what you're given, and just, you know, like, be happy that they're giving you a job. And so I remember like saying, okay, well, I'm gonna ignore what she said. So I still asked for a bonus, and I asked for a relocation package, and I did ask for more money. I didn't ask for a lot, but I figured I'd just throw in a number. And so, you know, they came back and they said, okay, well, we can't do this. We can't do the 3 things you asked, but we can give you these 2 things, right? And so I felt pretty confident. I was like, oh man, like they really want me, because, you know, it wasn't like what my mom said. But again, right, throughout, even till now, like when I tell my mom that I went into my boss's office and I told him I deserved a promotion, she was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna fire you. I was like, Mom, they're not gonna fire me. But, you know, anyway, so it could be your background, the way you're brought up. It could be that a lot of people usually have asked maybe for stuff and they've gone rejected. And I read a lot in the articles where it says that, you know, women sometimes have the fear to be liked if they're asking for what they want, or that they'll be seen as abrasive, or maybe when they get, like, people are scared to reject them. So then, because, like, I think in one article it said that we're too emotional, which I disagree. But, you know, there's a lot of data around how difficult it is and how uncomfortable it is for us to bring up these negotiations. And so as a result, you know, we're not really getting what we want. There's studies that have shown, you know, that women make a lot less than men, and Latina women make a lot less than white women, and other ethnicities. So, you know, I think after taking the negotiation classes and reading and learning how much you know, like, paid we are to the dollar compared to a white male, I think, to me, that's when I said, you know what, from now on, I'm just going to ask for what I want. Okay. So how can we kind of start negotiating? So at work, right? So I'm going to give you 2 aspects. You can apply this really at work or in your everyday life. Just start knowing your worth. And, you know, if you're like me, and, you know, there's that saying where it says, fake it till you make it. I mean, I know a lot of times people are like, you always seem so confident. And I say, I actually work on it a lot, right? I have to look at myself in the mirror before a presentation, and I have to tell myself, you got this, you know? So just, I think that is like the biggest thing, right? Is if you work hard, right? And you are really bringing value to your team and your organization, then remind yourself of that. I actually have this technique that one of my mentors taught me, which is I literally write all of my accomplishments every week, so that at the end of the month, I don't forget what I did. And when I have to write like my write-up at the end of the year, I kind of have a summary of what I did. And so, you know, knowing your worth, because sometimes you think you didn't do anything, but then when you go back and you read, man, I actually really did deliver those 3 things. Like, it kind of helps you have a positive, like, image of your worth, right? And you have data to back it up. So in work negotiations, right, this can be a salary, it can be a promotion, or even different job roles, right? So many companies, you might have a lateral move, which is not a salary or a technically promotion, but just that negotiating for certain things in that different job role can also be helpful. So I was reading this, a bunch of articles, like I said. One of the biggest things that has helped a lot of women get through that initial fear of, you know, trying to negotiate has been just being prepared and researching, right? So for example, if you are about to graduate and you're going to get your first salary when they give you an offer, you know, maybe some of the negotiation or the research rather behind it would be, look at what engineers are making in that part of the country where you're moving to. Because an engineer makes a different salary range in Texas than they do in Virginia, not only because you have to pay federal and state taxes, but the cost of living is also different. So also look at Glassdoor. There's like a lot of tools now that you can use out there to figure out how much they should be paying you. But also ask your male counterparts. So a lot of people are uncomfortable to talk about their salary and how much they were offered, especially as we move into the professional world. But I remember when my friends were getting offers from different companies, the guys would kind of brag about how much they were making. So that was kind of cool because I would just write down, oh, like that company offered him that. And then so when IBM or the other company came back, I was like, okay, well, that's not what they offered him. And so, you know, at least that gives you like a range of, you know, of what where to ask. So, you know, around with preparing and researching, if you're going to ask for a promotion or ask if your company can support you doing any programs or even, you know, getting the conference paid for, like once you're a professional and you want to come to the SHIP National Conference, or, you know, just a lot of companies are able to say, okay, you know, maybe the 10 of you can go, but what if you're not one of those, right? So maybe asking for those things. So as you're asking for those things, quantify your accomplishment, right? So I remember the first year that I started working, I wanted my manager to pay for my travel and pay for the conference, for the SHIP conference. But I actually had not really done anything for SHIP Austin at the time yet because I was so new for the conference. And so I couldn't really quantify my accomplishments, and I really didn't even know to ask, right? So I didn't even ask him because I was like, I know he's going to say no. Because I do this on the side. So in my head, I was like, they're not going to support me for some of the side stuff that I do. And then a year later, I find out that everyone always asks their manager if they can go to the SHIP conference, and that's how they get to go. So, you know, things to learn, always quantify your accomplishments if you're going for that promotion, or even if you're talking to HR, right? And they come back with the offer and they're like, hey, we're going to offer you, I don't know, I'm just going to make a number, 80,000. Then you can say, okay, well, I have done, you know, my GPA has been this, I have been the leader here, this is how I can help your organization, you know, can you go back and ask for more? Bring data and documentation. So I think one of the most scared moments I had was when I was asking for my first promotion. And my manager just kept telling me that I wasn't ready, right? And so I would say, well, then I need you to write like 20 things that I need to do to get there, right? And so he did, but I remember bringing those 20 points and showing it to him, and then I showed my improvement, right? And say, look, you told me to do this, I did this, and this is how I finished, and this is how I can quantify what I did. You said that I needed to bring my closures up, I closed all those tickets, here's the results, here's the data, right? So when you have all this data, and you're talking to anybody, right? Not just your manager, but your VP, or even your professor. Like if you're trying to get a grad research opportunity, bringing all the things that you've done, the data you've collected, and any areas of improvement that maybe others have told you, and showing them how prepared you are, I think speaks for itself. Let's see, next slide. Oops. Okay. So what if you have all of that and the problem is not how confident you are, like you already have been doing that, but how do you actually go into having a strategy for negotiating? So the best way I can describe this is how it looks on, I know it's not very pretty, but I tried to I tried to put it in boxes and make it look somewhat usable. So what I always do, right, is I tell myself, what is it that I want out of this negotiation, right? So we'll use like getting a job, right? So you want a higher salary, you want a bonus because you're going to need a little bit of extra cash to help you get to that next place. And if you pick a location that is not in, you know, where your school is or where your family is, then you're going to need a relocation package, right? And also, what if you realize that the benefits are not very good, and you do the research and you're like, oh man, I really should be getting a lot more for my 401k match, or the vacation, right? So one of the things, as I was thinking of leaving IBM, there's unlimited sick days at IBM. And so when I would go to other companies, they're like, oh yeah, you accrue like half an hour per work day for 6 days. And so to me, that was like, okay, am I willing to leave that? So in my strategy, I always wanted to add extra sick time or extra vacation days in my negotiating, right? So it doesn't have to only be about money. It can be about work-life balance. If you're a professional and you're trying to apply to a different company or a different role, maybe you say, okay, fine, like I'll take the lateral move, but what I really want is more flexibility in the hours with my family. And so think of those set of 3 things, or it could be even 4 things, right, that you're looking to get out. And then after you have your data, think of it like, if this is ideally what you want, right? So if ideally all I wanted was to get a salary increase and to get them to give me a relocation package, right? This is my happy path. I'm gonna ask for one more thing. And why is that? Because in a negotiation, you have 2 parties that are going into this to try to get the best result out of this situation, right? So if you're going to ask for more than what you want, and then the answer from that company or your manager or your family is, no, I can't give you all those 4 things, right? And then they're trying to say, okay, well, you want this and I want this, so then let's meet halfway, right? And so that is why it's so important to ask for more, because it looks like you really, really wanted all these 3 things, but what you really wanted inside of your head is just these 2. So then the likelihood is they'll say, oh, no, I can't give you that, but I'm going to work with you and let me give you these 2 things, right? So that's the best case scenario. Or maybe they just give you the 1 thing, but if you would have just asked for 2 things, then they would have given you 1, right? So the fact that you're asking for the 3 or the 4 things, then they'll try to, and then they think that they won because they're making you meet them halfway. But really, you just had a strategy where you're going to ask for more. So that's the biggest secret that I have that I've been using for all of my career, or not all of my career, but just those last years that I pointed out. So even now, right, even if it's as silly as I think when I was interviewing with other companies, I think I even asked like, well, I know that the answer is going to be no, but I just throw all these extra things in there so that they can be like, oh, she really wants those 6 things, but we gave her 3, but really all I wanted was the 3 things, right? I remember asking a company if like their company could match more, because I was like, well, at IBM I get this much match for my 401k, so can you match more? And I know, like, I worked as a manager for long years, so I understand that the answer is no, but just the fact that you put it in that initial negotiation, to them it feels like you are also compromising. So yeah, so next step. So what do I want you to do as you take all this in? Rehearse, right? So I would say before I go into a big negotiation, I rehearse. I call my sister and I'm like, I'm going to tell you this, you're going to tell me no. And then this is all the data that you have about me, and then tell me how you would come back. Just take the strategies that we learned today, practice with a mentor or a friend. Don't tell them what you want, right? Out of your goal, like have this number 2 outcome just in your head, and then see how that works. And sometimes preparing and talking to a friend, like, and having them say no, you know, kind of helps you. That way you can process those emotions that can sometimes come up. I remember when I asked for a promotion, like the 3rd time, or after I had gone into the new group, and my manager said no to my promotion, and he told me why. I remember I was so upset and I couldn't think. I was just like, because in my head I was like, oh, he's gonna say yes, because I've done all this work, right? And so I left, and then the next day I practiced with my sister, and then 2 days later I go in and I had already processed what he was gonna say, and I just gave them all the data, right? I said, look, I've done all these things, and his response was, you're right, there's nothing I can tell you. And so then he said, okay, I'll work on it, right? And so I would say that this, you know, would really be helpful for you all. And that's really all I had for today. I think I'm here for any questions that anyone can have. So let's see.
So much, Karen. That was really, really informative. And I totally agree with the whole negotiation thing. I recently had to think of like, how am I going to negotiate my salary? And all of like my family and my friends had totally different answers coming to me. So this was so fantastic. If you do have a question, please raise your hand or turn off your mic to ask it. We did have a private question for you, Karen, and it was, how would you approach wanting to negotiate locations in an entry-level position?
So I actually had to do that too, right? So I really wanted to go to Austin because this is the truth, and don't ever share this with my parents. I really was tired of George Mason is 20 minutes away from where my parents live. So I went to high school there, and I just wanted to get away. And I felt like I had 2 options to move to, Austin and North Carolina. North Carolina was only 4 hours away, so I told myself, no, Karen, they're going to come visit you every weekend. You got to go somewhere where they can't just drive. They got to fly. And so I really wanted Austin, right? And so, but I ended, you know, because they said, oh, well, do you have a preference? And my original response was no, I don't have a preference. But I would really say that what I did is I actually looked up what they were offering me compared to Texas and compared to North Carolina, because in every state it was different, right? So at the time, like the cost of living. So I showed them data, and I said, look, my preference would be to be in a place where, you know, I just put it on the salary, right? And I said, I compared the cost of living of these 2 places, and I would be making a lot less money in North Carolina, right? And so if you're willing to give me a higher salary for me to take the North Carolina location, then I will do it. But I would prefer to move to Texas because I've never been there, and I also had been talking to the manager from Texas, right? So that kind of helped me a little, but the lady really liked the approach that I had of showing the data that I had already, and I mean, they, you know, they weren't able to, because I think I said, like, if you match these two, right, and to get to the, let's say, I'm just going to make up a number, like 80,000, then they would have had to come up a lot more on the actual offer for North Carolina. So it was actually to their benefit that we ended up picking Austin. So I hope that helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question was also another private question. How can we balance imposter syndrome while planning a career negotiation?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things, right, would be, oops, I don't know, I had to, this piece, right? So I feel that imposter syndrome happens to everyone. I mean, especially to me. Before I go into any negotiation, I always try to have myself write down, like, quantify my accomplishments and bring the data of what I've done, because that kind of, seeing that in paper and seeing it in front of me, it'll make me say, oh, okay, yeah, Karen, you deserve this, right? Not only that, but if you really want to do that, then just kind of, I know that this sounds silly, but like, there's some people who put like little notepads on their mirror every morning, like, you know, you deserve this promotion. Like, just start using those positive words like a week or two before you go in there, because that'll actually it'll change the way you see your perspective. Another thing that I encounter with all the time is I actually manage, you know, men and women, and you'd be surprised how many times the men will just come ask for, you know, anything. Like, they'll say, oh, I know you just promoted me, but when is my next raise, right? And I'm like, and to me, I'm just baffled, because I'm like, you didn't even do the work. Like, you need to, you know. And so just every time you have an imposter syndrome, just think of me telling you that you can have two employees who work the same amount of hours, but men tend to have a better way of expressing and showing their manager what they do, whereas women believe that their manager is just going to know what they do, right? So just remember that what you're feeling is an imposter syndrome, and by seeing your results and by seeing what you've actually accomplished is a testament of what you've done.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have another question in the chat from Maria. She says, I feel that companies are taking advantage that a lot of people have been misplaced, and maybe even for those graduating soon, it's going to be competitive. How do you negotiate when companies are mostly offering low salaries less compensation with this type of competition?
So I will say, every time I offer someone something, you always assume that they're going to negotiate. So it's almost like HR knows that this is going to happen, so don't worry about asking for it. Because I've been doing hiring for a while, and the people who don't ask a lot are the people who graduate from college, because they're scared, because they're like, oh my God, what if they have 10,000 candidates, right? Which could be true, but then I would say, what I would tell myself is, like, if you're not meant to be in that company, then you won't be in that company, right? So I really go back to a lot of, like, I think it's a saying that a lot of South American countries have, like, lo que no está para ti nadie te lo quita. So I just feel that that especially in this time, it will be hard. But even if it's $1,000, just put it. It'll make you feel better. Just ask for those extra $1,000 or $2,000. To HR, $1,000, $2,000 is not a lot. So, but for you, it will give you that sense of worthiness, you know, when you go into that job. So.
I completely agree. We have another question from Rosaura. She asked, besides negotiating vacation, sick time off, relocation bonus, and 401k, what else should we consider when negotiating salary?
So if I would say one of the things that that I always looked at, but it wasn't really important to me as it is now, was the benefits, right? So I know that, let's see, you said vacation, okay, sick time off, relocation bonus, and then a bonus, right? So sometimes companies, okay, so maybe you meant like a salary and a bonus, because there's like the salary and then the bonus is that like one-time offer. If you're gonna do something in like consulting or sales, maybe negotiating that percentage back, or maybe negotiating like, what does this company believe in? Like if I wanted to get a certificate, right? If I wanted to get my PE, my professional engineering, you know, can you commit to helping me pay for that certificate? And it could be that the answer is no, but at least it'll be in your manager's mind that you're interested in pursuing that. A lot of times, like, we underestimate how, you know, once you're done with school, if you, let's say you want to get your PE, or if you want to get your master's, or even if you want to get that project management certification, all those certifications, like OSHA certifications, all that costs money. And so maybe negotiating some of those certifications, or see if you can negotiate some evening education classes as part of the benefits. Also maybe time, like flexibility in your schedule, right? Like especially if you plan to have a family at some point, right? Just asking about the flexibility of that organization or company would be good, right? Just say like, what are some of the benefits that we have once we start working there? Like if I were to have a family and stuff. And I know that it's like, maybe to HR, they're like, I remember one of the strangest questions I got is, what is the, like some companies like Facebook, they do like stocks on top of 401k. So like they'll give you like a salary, and then they'll give you a hiring bonus, but then they'll give you stocks. So maybe also ask for stocks, and a lot of companies, they also do that. And then sometimes, like, I think one of the other weird questions that I got was, can you turn, instead of a one-time lump sum, like an onboarding bonus, can you turn that into shares, into stock shares instead? Because that can tend to go up. So those are some of the things I can think of.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It looked like we had a question from Diana. Diana, did you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if you mentioned it. I lost connection for a little bit, but well, you're giving examples of when we're getting the job offer based on others' questions, but what if you already have the job? I feel like it can be an awkward situation, well, at least for people that are not extroverts, to bring up the question of how can I get a raise, basically, like, or asking for a raise. So based on your experience, do you have any advice or anything like that for those who are not extroverts?
Yeah. So I always ask myself, what would my male counterpart do, right? And when the answer is, I think he'd probably already asked for a raise, then I go back into my little corner and try to, again, I think the best way to do this, and what I love when I have employees who come to me to ask for raises, they come with quantified results, right? So if you start writing down everything you do every month, it doesn't have to be every week, I sometimes forget, but like every month, and you start writing, because at the beginning of the year, most companies, right, you're given a set of goals. And if you're not, then that's maybe something that you and your manager can work on. Give me goals for this year. Give me those 5 goals that are going to help me get to be a better employee, right? And so when you get those goals, quantify the accomplishment against those goals that you've done and bring that to the conversation and say, look, I've been working really hard this year, and I wanted to show you how much I've accomplished. I think that is how I usually start my negotiations of asking for a raise. And I say, I know usually raises in most companies usually happen either in the middle of the year or in 3Q, because 4Q is usually bad for most companies. They like, if they've overspent, then they shut down all of the spending. So always try to go towards the end of like 2Q or in the middle of the year to kind of show what you've done, and just ask and say, and if it's your first year, then even better. But even if it's your second year, you can say, you know, I didn't hear anything about a raise last year, so I'm wondering, when do raises usually happen? And then the answer can be, you know, we do it automatically, or we only do it for top performers. So if the answer is we only do it for top performers, or we only do it for certain people, then ask your manager to give you a list of goals that you need in order to get there, right? Because it could be that once he's writing it down, he realizes you're already ready. And then the answer is pretty simple, right? But in the act of you guys working on this list together, how you can get to that salary increase, you know, I think can be helpful. But that's usually how I ask for it, right? And sometimes, you know, like for example, a lot of companies this year, unfortunately, because of COVID, said, you know, we're not going to lay people off, or no one's getting a raise. And I think some companies even took like 401ks from their employees, like the match. And so I know that this is like a tough year, but definitely keep all your accomplishments so far. And then when January 2021 hits, go in there and say, hey, look what I've done. And usually in most companies at the end of the year, you do like a self-evaluation for the year. And if your company doesn't do that, then maybe you just turn that into your manager. Like I would just do that. Like if I worked at a company where we didn't do that, I'd just quantify all my accomplishments and send it to my manager and say, look, I've done all these things. And I think it'll start opening their eyes. And for you as an introvert, you know, you can feel prepared because you have that data. And it won't be like, you know, you're bragging about something that you didn't do, because you're just stating facts at that point. Does that make sense? Hopefully that was helpful.
It was, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. I think we have about 1 minute left, and we have one last question. So I'm going to ask it really fast. It's from Maria. She asked, is it awkward if interviewers ask about salary right away during the interview? Is there a way to go about it?
Okay, so what you should never do is when you're interviewing for a position and the interviewer asks you, how much do you expect to make? That's a trap. Don't fall into that. Your answer should and will always be, I have, you know, I graduated with a bachelor's of electrical engineering from George Mason University. I have, you know, been a leader for this. I have a GPA of 3.5. You are, you know, Google or Facebook or IBM, an amazing company that is already doing so much in diversity. I'm pretty sure you can find an equitable salary for someone with my expertise. Because what happens, right, is if you say 65, they're gonna be like, oh, she just wants 65. Just give her 67 and she'll think, you know. So you end up boxing yourself. And this also goes for those who already have a job. If you're applying to another company and they ask you that, don't answer. Just say, I have 10 years of experience and I bring all of this to the table. I'm pretty sure that whatever offer you bring me will be an offer based on my skills. It's actually illegal in some states for the interviewer to ask you that, but people don't know that. So then they'll just say, and then they'll and then you end up being boxed in. So that's the other way around. But if I was interviewing you and you asked me what's the salary range, it's not awkward because we're both thinking it. It's usually the answer, if it's a big company, will be, well, HR will let you know. Because really sometimes like as hiring managers, like we don't really know like the salaries. But for example, I just helped my sister interview for a job and I asked her like, just ask how much it is. And she was so scared. And so I wrote the email for her and I was like, hey, I forgot to ask one more question. What is the salary range? And so it is awkward, but they're all expecting it. So don't feel like they're going to think you're less of a good candidate if you ask how much money you're going to get paid.
Awesome. That is so much great advice, Karen. Thank you, everyone, for asking all these amazing and difficult questions. But please give Karen like a virtual applause for taking the time to share with us and help with all these, because all of this is happening to us currently, especially since we're just graduating. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to continue staying updated with SHIP Region 5, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Stay connected by following us on all our social media. Our Instagram is at SHPRegion5, our Facebook is at SHIP.Region5, our Twitter is at SHIP_Region5. We hope you could join us live for the second part of our SHPEtinas series. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.